Reverse 1999 is a 20th century strategic gacha RPG. However, with its uncontested storytelling and outright otherworldly visuals, this game is far beyond any gacha game I have ever played, and I believe it has the potential to redefine the gacha genre as a whole. Needless to say, I tried it out and I am obsessed. Despite its many strengths, it is not without some room for improvement. So here are my first impressions after finishing the entire main story and the majority of the current endgame content. Firstly, let's get started with what I liked. The game has quite the amazing plot set in the 20th century with a time-traveling theme. Its storytelling is really the best I have ever experienced in any gacha game, and it was easy to get pulled in and heavily invested in right from the start. I never felt the urge to skip the cutscenes, which is quite the rare occurrence for me in RPGs. However, from what I've seen, some people had difficulties understanding the story and the dialogue, but for me personally, I really enjoyed it and thought it was both easy to follow along and get invested in. Something that I really enjoy is how the story isn't afraid of touching upon darker and more disturbing themes and scenarios, without seeming overly edgy, as I think unfortunately a lot of anime lands in. The story feels mature, well developed and thought through. Manus Vindicte, the conspiracy cult led by the absolutely stunning woman Arcana, is definitely one of the highlights. I really enjoy how besides being a hot anime villain, they're actually showing through actions how they're willing to do anything to push their own agenda and commit evil deeds to give us this impression. This is something very important that I think a lot of games get wrong. Show, don't tell. And Reverse 1999 definitely shows. If I had one complaint about the storytelling, it would have to be the interlude kind of interactions where we interact with certain objects. I think it's fine with interlude sort of elements, however, there's this one object that we have a dialogue with, and this adapts to the typical RPG dialogue where I found myself just skipping because I could not be bothered to read and go through it. Such things should be kept optional, like the letters and such you can find. The dialogue, unlike many, I actually quite enjoy. To me, the game feels surreal and otherworldly, and I think that the dialogue very much contributes to that. Arcana's late Middle English, for lack of a better term, is reminiscent of how someone in the Dark Souls series would speak, and it gives her a very regal and mysterious vibe. Another positive is Vertin. She's an actual person with her own struggles, background and personality. It's refreshing seeing a protagonist who is an actual developed character and not just an empty vessel for self-insertion. The visuals are a big selling point. When I discuss modern games with my friends, a key point I always bring up is how I feel a lot of modern games are very soulless and uninspired. Anime games, while not all, feel like they play way too heavily on anime tropes and a similar fantasy theme that is rare to see something that feels fresh, original and inspired. Don't get me wrong, I love anime games, but I am still able to see its flaws. Not only is the game 2D, but the visual style is very paint-like and it looks absolutely fantastic and like nothing I have personally seen out there. When it comes to the designs, I really enjoy a lot of them, and I enjoy that they have a certain twist to them. My favorite character right now is Druvis, an elegant but troubled young lady with a tragic past. Just by looking at her, you can see her classic garment signifying she has a background of old money, but in her eyes, you can see the melancholy she carries around. Her constantly holding her bouquet of missile shows how nature-oriented she is. She's interesting to look at and makes me want to find out more about her. I think a good design conveys a character's personality and role. Not only does the visual design of the character help convey the personality, but the amazing live 2D animation helps a lot too. The characters have multiple sets of movements that really just sells them to me. It makes them feel very much alive and constantly moving according to what they're saying and what is going on. Sonetto's Italian hands, for example. I also really appreciate them actually moving their mouths most of the time when they're speaking as well. There are a few exceptions though, if we had to nitpick. This is something that is so simple but contributes so much to the overall immersion of the storytelling. The backgrounds are also amazing. Every single one could be hung up on the wall. That's how beautiful it is. Everything feels cohesive, yet unique, and really makes the world feel alive and as one. The combat system is what I was mostly a bit on my guard with. I've been following the game development for quite some time, and when I first saw the card system, I was intimidated. I am not a stranger to the turn-based combat, as I've played games with it before, such as Epic 7, Final Fantasy, and many more. However, I have never been a fan of card games despite how much I really wanted to get into them. Reverse 1999's card system for abilities is however genius. The RNG doesn't feel frustrating at all, but it keeps the combat exciting and unpredictable, whereas I feel challenged in how I strategize, but also feel incentivized to try again at stages I fail. I feel encouraged to play different playstyles and whose cards to use to gain Moxie to use their ultimate. However, my main gripes with the game are following. The energy system is very restrictive. I am fully aware of the function an energy system fills in gacha games and how it is necessary, but the energy system is so stingy in this game that it prevents any meaningful character progression. At the point where I'm currently at, getting one level for one character consumes my entire daily stamina pretty much. It does not feel good to be time-gated this much that the progression moves at the pace of a snail. I understand the reasoning behind it, considering I've pretty much completed everything to do in the game except 2-starring a few of the last stages in Chapter 4 and also completing the 10th stream simulation. To take into consideration is also that I bought the monthly pack, so I cannot imagine how little progress a free-to-play person would make at this stage of the game. I am cutting the game some slack in this department, considering it is the game launch and there are patches to come with more content, but the lack of progression is definitely something to consider. This game, like most gacha, is not one you spend hours in when you're at Endgame so far. My experience is limited to the global launch as I have not played the Chinese version, so please tell me in the comments what your experience is and if this approves upon later on. This in itself isn't a deal breaker to me as I play many other games, but it is a shame such a satisfying combat system isn't being utilized more due to energy limitations. I know a lot of people have gripes with grinding, but I would really love some opportunity to grind and spend time in this game I have come to absolutely adore. My second gripe is that the game definitely needs some more game modes. A side story to grind for a bit would make a huge difference as there is very little to do as of this moment. I tried researching what is to come in the future patches, so once again I reiterate, I would love to know if more game modes and content are added except story chapters. I do know that there are raid-like bosses, if I understood it correctly, coming in about 1.4. Some concluding thoughts are that the game is definitely a force to be reckoned with, and I hope it sets a new standard of quality in the gacha game industry. The art is absolutely phenomenal, and the story contributes to a lot of immersion into the world and makes me care for the characters that inhabit it. I hope more games start experimenting with storytelling as a plot device, because the classic RPG discourse of having massive dialogue bloating with the 90% word vomit does not cut it for me anymore. Reverse 1999's fully voice-acted main story and properly animated characters makes the world feel more alive than ever. Finally, I'd like to add that this is a game unlike any I've ever played, and I will continue playing it religiously, and I'm excited for the future content to come. I would definitely recommend trying it for yourself if you have not already. Please consider subscribing to my channel for more Reverse 1999 content, and leave a comment down below and tell me what you think of the game so far. Take care until next time.